Shalom everyone, and welcome to Learn Together Parashat Miketz. In this parasha, we will try to highlight and to focus on a biblical figure which sometimes you feel really sad about him. And who do I have in mind? Reuven. And I titled this shiur, Reuven's Tragedy. And what do I mean by that? This parasha describes this confrontation and the conflict between Joseph and his brothers. The brothers have no clue that Joseph is their brother. They feel hostility. They feel animosity from this person who is almost the king of Egypt, who is investigating them, accusing them of being spies. And then when Joseph basically says to them, "Oh, I have a wonderful idea. Im kenim atem, if you are really honest and you are not spies in Egypt, achechem echad yaser beveit mishmarchem, one brother will remain with me here in Egypt, in jail, in prison, ve'atem, and you, lechu aviu shever ha'avon batechem, and you can go home, bring food, and everything will be fine. And then, ve'et achichem hakaton taviu elai, but don't forget, if you want this brother, who according to our sages was Shimon, if you want this guy back, you need to bring your little brother that you told me that he is part of your siblings. V'yamnu davrechem v'lo tamutu v'yasu ken. Basically, Joseph says to them, look, I'm not playing games with you. I accused you to be spies. You said, no, we are not spies. We are all brothers here, and we have a father in the land of Canaan. And then there is another brother we left in Israel, in Canaan. So we are all good. Joseph says, I don't believe you. And in order to show you that I don't believe you, I'm taking one brother as a collateral. I'll put him here in prison. Bring your younger brother with you, and I'll believe you, and everything will be fine. But if you don't bring him, you will all die. So this is obviously a very harsh statement. And the brothers are pretty much amazed of what are they going to do. They know that they need to go to Yaakov, to their father, and ask to bring Benjamin to Egypt. Yaakov already lost Joseph. There is only one more son from Rachel, from Rachel. That's not going to be an easy task to convince Yaakov to let Benjamin go. So what do? Vayomru ish el achiv. So they start talking to each other. Aval ashemim anachnu. Yes, we confess, we should be blamed for something. Al achinu, on our brother. Asher ראינו צרת נפשו בהתחננו עלינו ולא שמענו, על כן באה אלינו הצרה הזאת. This is, by the way, a shiur, a class for itself. But the brothers has a sense and sensitivity that these harsh statements that come from this king of Egypt or viceroy of Egypt is because they did something wrong. And they said, you know what? We have zero regrets on the fact that we sold Joseph, but we do have regrets that we did it in a very uncompassionate way, in a very cruel way. Just imagine, Joseph was in the pit, was crying for help. He was probably naked in the pit because the Torah says that they took his garment off. And according to some of our sages, there were scorpions and snakes in the pit. So you can imagine Joseph screaming, please, and they don't pay any attention to him. So if it will stop here, if the biblical narrative will stop here, you will say, okay, so they heard this very harsh statement from Joseph, not knowing that he's Joseph, and they basically blame themselves for being insensitive, and therefore they deserve some kind of insensitivity. But now, our biblical figure, Reuven, is coming into the picture. Vayan Reuven otam le'emor. So Reuven addresses all the siblings, all the brothers, saying to them, Alo amarti alechem, I told you, Al tachteu bayaled velo shmatem. I told you many years ago, 13 years ago, that you shouldn't sell Joseph. Vegam damo ine nidrash, and now we need to pay for that. You should have listened to me. Now, והם לא ידעו, and they did not know, כי שומע יוסף כי המליץ בינותם. They did not know that Joseph listened to that. Joseph could hear them, and he obviously could understand them. They did not know. So one thing for sure, before I go and deal with Reuven, just one thing. Joseph can hear that Reuven said to them, I told you, don't sell him. So at least now Joseph knows that at least one brother did not want to sell him, which is interesting. But let's leave that aside. Let me focus on Reuven with you. When you read this pasuk, when we read this pasuk together, isn't that sound a little childish? Immature? Meaningless? Something already happened years ago. And now they are being punished. Now, no one knows that they were punished dafka specifically because of what they did at that specific moment. Maybe it's because of something else. But even if it was for that, now is the time to say, I told you? This is the most immature reaction. I told you. Okay, you told us. We didn't listen. How is that going to help us now? Reuven is the firstborn. He is the oldest. He should be the most mature one. How can we explain this behavior? In order to add to it, take a look at what Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam, Rabbi Avraham, the son of the Rambam, explained in his interpretation to the Torah. He says, ומה שאמר וגם דמו הנה נדרש בתוספת. כלומר, אנחנו נתבעים על אשר לא חמלנו כמו שאמרתם אבל אשמים, ונתבעים גם כן על אשר רציתם להמית אותו. ואם מת, הרי לא נשלם העונש, אלא נשארה תביעת אדם גדולה מזו. Basically, what Reuven says to them, according to Rabbi Avraham, is, one, you are correct. You were totally insensitive, it's a nice word, cruel to your brother, and this is part of our punishment, but even more so, we sold him. We don't know if he survived, and if he was murdered, if he was killed. His blood, basically that was shed, is on us. So basically now Reuven is making the severity of the sin even larger. Basically Reuven is telling them, you not need to only confess about being insensitive. You need to confess for murder. But just 1 second. The fact that Joseph could have been murdered, it's only one option. Maybe Joseph is still alive. Why are you making up another thing so they will feel bad about themselves? Meaning, what's the idea? What is Reuven trying to accomplish? And what does it mean about his character? Because think about it. Basically, Joseph's brothers, and I know it's very hard to feel sympathy towards them. They sold their own brother, they lied to their father, they caused tremendous pain to Joseph, to Yaakov. We have no sympathy to them. But don't forget, they are still Yaakov's children. They are the pillars of the Jewish people, of Am Yisrael, all of them, together with Joseph and Binyamin and Reuven. So it doesn't matter how much sympathy we have towards them, they are still what we call Shivtei Ka. Those are God's tribes. So you look at Reuven, and you basically say, what does he want? That we will feel even worse than we feel now? Okay, mission accomplished. But also, you need to be realistic. You don't know what happened to Joseph. Yes, he might be murdered, he might be killed, I don't know. But he also might be well, and he's a slave, so I don't know how well can you be as a slave, but you can be okay. So Reuven's behavior, Reuven's reaction to the situation is odd, is a bit strange. The Netziv, in his interpretation, tried to explain Reuven's behavior, and he says, Vayan Reuven otam le'emor, so Reuven responded to his siblings that they said, oh, we need to be sorry, we need to repent because we were cruel to Joseph. Reuven says to them, no, you are missing the point. To'im atem badavar, you are mistaken. Ki ha'ashma al kulanu b'shaveh. This is an interesting interpretation. Basically, brother says, we are the one in fault because we were cruel to Joseph. Basically excluding Reuven, because Reuven was not there when they sold Joseph. He says, no. Ki ha'ashma al kulanu b'shaveh. We are all equally at fault. הלא אמרתי עליכם אל תחטאו בילד, האווירו והדין והיושר מעליו, כי ילד הוא, ואינו עושה ומדבר ברוע לב, אלא מעשה ילדות הוא. He says to them, I told you. Joseph is just a child. He is childish, he is immature, he is saying things, he has no clue what he is saying, just dismiss him. Don't take it so seriously. וגם דמו ידי מדרש. לא עוון המכירה בלבד. It's not only the fact that we sold our brother, שזה היה ראוי לכך אם לא היה מצד ילדות. אבל אפשר שנהרג או מת מרוב צרות ולא היה חייב מיתה. Basically, the Tatziv is giving here an interpretation that basically Reuven says to his brothers, look, if Joseph was serious about what he said, and he really tried to badmouth us and to push us aside so we will be rejected, so maybe he deserved to be sold. But I told you he was just a child, and now who knows what happened to him? He might be suffering, he might have been killed. ונדרש דמו מכולנו שאנחנו כולנו חייבים בדבר, ואם כן אין לנו לבחור אחד או שניים ממנו. Basically, Reuven says to them, you think that there is punishment towards individuals. Because according to Chazal, as I said before, Shimon was the one who was kept in prison, and Shimon and Levi are always together. If you remember, with the story of Dinah, Shimon and Levi were the leading team to annihilate Shechem and his family and the people in the city. They were always together. Also, towards Joseph, they were very aggressive towards Joseph. When they saw him from afar, they immediately created this conspiracy of how to kill him. So the brothers start blaming each other. You are at fault. We were all cruel. You sold him. You hated him. You didn't understand him. And Reuven is trying to calm them down and to be what we call in Hebrew mamlachti, which means we are all at fault. Don't blame individuals. Basically, the Natziv is trying to portray Reuven as someone who is a unifier, someone who is trying to bring everyone together, says, you know what, enough. Don't blame each other. That's not going to go anywhere. That's not going to help. That's not beneficial. That just creates more animosity. Stop. We are all at fault. So, the Natziv reads the Pasuk in a very unconventional way, and he says that Reuven says to them, I told you, does not mean I told you it's your fault, but I told you, and because I was not able to convince you, we are all at fault. So if we saw at the beginning that it's very hard to understand Reuven's behavior and reaction, which seems to be so immature, the Natziv basically turns it and says, no, it was very mature. He was trying to tell them, we are all at fault, we all need to do something together. However, the Natziv's interpretation is very flattering to Reuven, and it portrays Reuven in much better light. But there is a major problem in the narrative itself. When the brothers go home to the land of Canaan with food, but no Shimon. Shimon is missing. And they need to talk to their father. The only way, and that's what Joseph's demand, the only way that you can see your brother who is in prison, and the only way that I will give you any grain of wheat or barley, one, is by you bringing Benjamin with you. Now, how can you convince Yaakov to do so? Do you think Yaakov will be willing to give his only son from Rachel, Binyamin, to those people who basically told him, yeah, you sent Joseph and we didn't even find his body, but there is the garment here, it's bloody. What do you think? Joseph is gone, Shimon is gone, you don't know what's going on in Yaakov's brain. Maybe they got rid of Shimon as well. And now you want to tell me that I need to send my youngest son, Binyamin, with you? What do you think they can say to Yaakov that will convince him? So, Reuven comes along. Vayomer Reuven el aviv לאמור, and Reuven says to his father, את שני בניי תמית אם לא אביאנו אליך. תנה אותו על ידי ואני אשיבנו אליך. Reuven comes as the firstborn and says, as we say in Hebrew, alai, on me. If I don't bring him back, you can kill my 2 children. Now, on one hand, you can look at that and say, wow, this is incredible. Reuven is so sure about himself. Reuven is so committed to the mission. He is willing to give his own 2 children. But then you stop and you pause and you think and you say, what are you saying, Reuven? Your children are Yaakov's grandchildren. So what are you going to say? That if you fail in your mission and you cannot bring Benjamin back, so I, Yaakov, going to lose. I already lost Joseph. I will lose Shimon. I will lose Benjamin. And I'm going to lose 2 of my grandchildren? How is that going to help? How is that going to convince Yaakov to send Benjamin with Reuven? And take a look what the Midrash says in Bereshit Rabbah. And that's exactly what Yaakov says to Reuven. Vayomer Reuven el aviv et shnei banai tamit. Reuven says to his father Yaakov, you will kill my 2 children if I'm not going to bring Benjamin back. Amar lo, so Yaakov says to Reuven, V'chi banecha einan banai? Like, your children are not my own children? Your grandchildren are not considered my own? Like, how do you want me even to react to such a statement? And before we continue the Midrash, I just want to call your attention to ask yourself a question. What is wrong with Reuven? How can you even come with such an idea? I can understand, Reuven would come and say, look, if I don't bring Benjamin back, excommunicate me, reject me from the family, okay? But to say, kill my own children if I don't bring Benjamin, how is that going to help? And therefore, the Midrash delineates something that it's not in the narrative, but it describes what Judah says to the children, to the brothers. Amar lahem Yehuda. So Yehuda says to his brothers, Hanichu lazaken ad shetichle apat. Yehuda says, don't be impetuous. Wait. Let's wait for Yaakov and all of us to finish up the food that we brought from Mitzrayim. And then there is no food. When there is no food and times are hard, maybe we can talk to our father in a different way. Amar lo Yehuda, Abba. So after there is no more food, Yehuda comes to his father, to Yaakov, and says to him, Abba, im olech Binyamin imanu safek nitpas, safek lo nitpas. He says, look, if we take Benjamin, yes, there is 50-50. 50% we bring him back, 50% he's gone. But if he will not go with us, if you will not send Benjamin with us, I understand you don't trust us. I understand all your reasons, but one thing, by you making a decision not sending Benjamin with us, we are all going to die. No food for no one. So Yaakov, make a decision. מוטב, תניח את הספק ותתפוס את הוודאי. Yehuda says to Yaakov, if you want to listen to my suggestion, there is a safek, there is a doubt, and then there is certainty. Obviously, you go with certainties. You know, if you're not going to send Benjamin, taking upon yourself a risk, we are all going to die. So therefore, it seems to be very clear to me what you need to do. Now you look at what Yehuda did, and you cannot not be amazed by the chutzpah. Judah puts Yaakov in an impossible situation. Benjamin or the entire family? Pick your choice. And Yaakov is pushed to the corner. Can you imagine Yaakov? Yosef is gone. Shimon is gone. His firstborn son, Reuven, saying things that he has no clue where he is coming from. And then Judah comes from nowhere. And Judah himself already has some history with Tamar. And he basically says something that is very logical but very cruel. Yaakov needs now to make a decision that will determine the fate of his family. Amar, so Yaakov says, Mi me'arev bo? Who will take responsibility? Who is going to be the guarantor for Benjamin? I am going to send him, but I need some assurances. I need someone who will say, look, I am going to fight for him. I will not let him go like that. Amar lo, says Judah to Yaakov, Ani, I will do it. Shene'emar, Anochi e'ervenu miyadit evakshenu. I will guarantee him, you will ask him, you will demand him for my own hands. And Yaakov agrees. Take a look at Reuven and Yehuda. When you compare Reuven and Yehuda, you see two major clear differences. Reuven is talking to Yaakov immediately after they come from Egypt. Basically, he says the food is on the table, everyone is pretty happy that there is food, Shimon is missing, Yaakov is about to ask questions, and Reuven jumps in and says, look, we need Benjamin back so we can bring Shimon back and we can have food, so just send me Benjamin, and I promise you, if I don't bring Benjamin back, kill my children. Wrong time, wrong place, wrong suggestion. Being impetuous. Judah takes his time. He waits for the times to be terrible. There is no food. You are hungry. And then what Judah does, he basically takes Benjamin and he tried to diminish the significance and the weight of Benjamin's value in Yaakov's life. Basically, he says, look, Yaakov, I understand you care about Benjamin. But if you prefer Benjamin or on all of us, we are all going to die, including Benjamin. Which basically leaves Yaakov with zero choices. Yaakov understands that we are all going to die. But he is looking for a guarantor. And Judah now revealed his true color by saying, I will take it upon myself. Which this midrash, by the way, also hints that Yehuda is also going through some kind of a transformation. What is the transformation that Judah is going through? Is obviously taking responsibilities. Judah took zero responsibilities when he was the leader, in a way, of selling Joseph, because he says, look, some of the brothers wanted to kill Joseph. Reuven says, don't do it. So Judah says, you know what, let's just get rid of him, let's just sell him. This is not a compromise, this is running away from achrayut, from responsibilities. But Judah is building himself. He took responsibilities with Tamar, with his daughter-in-law, saying, I'm the one, I am the father of these two children. And now he's taking responsibilities for Benjamin. So what exactly the narrative is trying to tell us about Reuven? So in order to understand Reuven and why he lost it, he lost his right to firstborn and it was given to Joseph. His right for kingship was given to Yehuda. His right for priesthood was given to Levi. What was missing to some extent in his character? So we need to go back and to read a pasuk that describes the following. ויהי בשכון ישראל בארץ ההיא. And when Israel, Yaakov, was dwelling in that land, and that was after Rachel died, וילך ראובן, Reuven went, וישכב את בילה פילגש אביו וישמע ישראל. Rachel is dead, and Reuven, based on the simple understanding of the narrative, he goes ahead and he sleeps with whom? With Bilhah, which was Rachel's maidservant, who was also the mother of some of Yaakov's children. And Yaakov, Israel, heard about it. It's a very mysterious verse. Like, and then what? But nothing. Yaakov is really holding on his rebuke to Reuven at the end of his life in Parashat Vayechi. According to some interpretations, Reuven didn't really sleep with Bilhah. He just basically put Yaakov's bed instead of in Rachel's tent that she's already dead. Yaakov moved his bed to Bilhah's tent, and Reuven took the bed and put it in Leah's bed. Whatever the interpretation is, it's inappropriate. Reuven decided to intervene in his father's private matters, which was inappropriate. But 1 second. Why did he do that? Who in his right mind, as a son, going to decide where his father going to sleep with? This makes no sense, right? בכל זאת, it's Reuven. Why would he do that? Says Rashi, in the name of the Gemara, מתוך שבלבל משכבו מעלה על הכתוב כאילו שכבה, meaning, don't read the pasuk that he really slept with Bilhah, but he did something else that is considered like sleeping with her, but he didn't. And then the main important point, ולמה? Why בלבל וחילל יצואיו? Why would he do that? Says Rashi the following, כשמתה רחל, נטל יעקב מיתתו שהייתה נתונה תדיר באוהל רחל ולא בשאר אוהלים, ונתנה באוהל בלהה. Yaakov, even though he had 4 wives, the wife that he really loved from the get-go was Rachel. That was not a secret. So, every time that he could, he was with Rachel. And now Rachel passed away. So what did he do? Yaakov, he put his bed in Bilhah's tent. Okay, that was his decision. בא ראובן ותבע עלבון אמו. Reuven was upset. He says, I need to defend my mom. Leah. אמר, אם אחות אמי הייתה צרה לאמי, שפחת אחות אמי תהא צרה לאמי, לכך בלבל. Basically, Reuven says, I cannot accept it. While Rachel was alive, I understand. She was my mom's sister. My father Yaakov loved Rachel more than my mom. I understand. But now Rachel is gone. So who should be second in command? My mom, Leah, not the maidservant. This is inappropriate from Yaakov's perspective. Reuven says, I will not accept it. I am going to defend the honor of my mom. And therefore, I'm going to take Yaakov's bed from Bilhah's tent, and I'm going to place it with my mom's tent. Now, on one hand, you cannot not feel sympathy. And you know what? Even more than sympathy, empathy to Reuven. Leah's situation in Yaakov's family was not that great. If you look at the names of the 3 first children that Leah gave birth to, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, it's all about her feelings of feeling rejected and even hated by Jacob. Yisachar, she basically rented Yaakov out. She always struggled for a bit, a drop of love. And she gave birth to 6 boys and 1 girl. That's more than a half of Yaakov's children, and still she does not get the attention and the love. I don't know exactly how it worked in Yaakov's family, but Rachel was definitely the favorite, and now Bilhah is the favorite. And Reuven says, I can't stand it anymore. I can't see my mom goes to bed tearing and crying for feeling that she's unloved. I'm going to do something to defend her, to help her, to protect her. This is my right as the firstborn. So you cannot not feel empathy to Reuven. But at the same time, you look at that and you say, Reuven, what are you doing? Who gave you permission to intervene in your father's most private matters? Who are you to dictate to Yaakov who to love and who not to love? No one ignores the issue that Leah is in a terrible shape. But you are not the one to make those decisions. You have a problem, go to Yaakov, says, my dear father, I would like to discuss with you something. I'm the firstborn of this family. I see something that, in my opinion, is inappropriate. Can you please explain yourself to me? Or maybe you would like to take into consideration, look, I'm telling you, my mommy is crying every night. Can you do something about it? Instead, Reuven just take charge and making decisions for others. This is a problem. And this is what Yaakov is trying to convey to Reuven at the end of his life. At the end of Yaakov's life at Parashat Vayechi, when Yaakov is giving blessings and rebuke to his children, he says to Reuven the following, Reuven, Bechori ata. Reuven, you are my firstborn, kochi vereshitoni, you are my first strength, yeter set veyeter oz. I gave you everything, at least I hope to give you everything. But you have a problem, Reuven. Pachaz kamaim al totar. You are impetuous. You are too quick to respond without too much thinking. Ki alita mishkevei avicha. You basically climbed on your father's bed. As chilalta yetzui ala, you desecrated my privacy. You desecrated my holiness. This is a harsh rebuke. You are impetuous, and therefore what? Take a look at source number 10. Yeter s'et, ראוי היית להיות יתר על אחיך בכהונה. You were designated, you were destined to be a Cohen. לשון נשיאות כפיים. יתר עוז במלכות ויתן עוז למלכו. You are supposed to be the Cohen. You are supposed to be the king. You are my firstborn. Most of the firstborns are the ones who are basically destined to take over. Even though, just as a side note, when you look at the history of the world, most of the firstborns lost the right. Cain with Ishmael, Esav, even here, Reuven is going to lose it. ומי גרם לך להפסיד כל אלה? What was the cause? What was the reason that basically you lost everything that you were destined? פחז כמים. הפחז והבהלה, being impetuous, being too quick to react. בהלה, confusion. אשר מיהרת להראות כעסך. You were too quick to show your anger. כמים הללו הממהרים למרוצתם, לכך אל תותר. And therefore, I need to take away all those gifts that I plan to give you. You cannot be a priest. You cannot be a king. אל תותר, אל תרבה ליטול כל היתרות הללו, שהיו ראויות לך. This is a very, very, very sad end result to Reuven. Someone who was destined for glory and fame and greatness, and he lost everything because of that flaw, because of this, something that was missing in his character. Too impetuous, not too much thinking. Says Ramban, Nachmanides, Pachas Kamayim, what does it mean, Pachas? So I translate it as being impetuous. the Ramban says, Shem davar, min anashim reikim vepochazim, reikim venimarim kalei da'at. Pochez is being used in biblical narrative as someone who is not that sophisticated. Kal da'at, meaning very quick to respond, is not that sophisticated, not that smart, not that wise. He's just like, he's always reacting just like emotionally or without any knowledge. Basically, Reuven is pachaz, is pochez. Someone that you cannot give the keys for kingdom and kingship and priesthood to someone like that. If that's true, let's pause here. And beside the tragedy that we just explored and revealed regarding Reuven, now let's think, without knowing too much. So Reuven listened to his father. And his father says to him, I'm sorry, son. You lost it. You started it with mixing the beds or sleeping with Bila, whatever it is, but basically being impetuous and intervening in private matters that you should really stay away from. Then we saw in different psukim that Reuven continues with this behavior of telling his brothers, I told you, or by suggesting to Yaakov, kill my own children if I'm not going to bring Benjamin, which seems to be so immature. So now, what do you think Reuven feels? What does he feel? Basically, his father told him, I don't know how to say it nicely, but you disappointed me. You will never be what you were destined to be. That's harsh. That's painful. What do you do with it? So I would like to suggest to you the following idea. Much later on in history, Reuven is already dead, but his tribe is obviously alive. On the way to the land of Israel, we all know this famous story that the tribe of Reuven and the tribe of Gad had tremendous amount of flock, and they came to Moshe saying, you know what, we do not want to cross the Jordan River. We would like to stay here in this side of the Jordan River, and we have here a tremendous amount of grass for our flock, and we would like to stay here. And that was source number 12. ומקנה רב, there was tremendous amount of flock לראובן, לבני ראובן ולבני גד, to the children of Reuven and the children of Gad, עצום מאוד. You cannot have numbers for them. ויראו את ארץ יעזר ואת ארץ גלעד, והנה המקום מקום מקנה. They saw the other side of the river, not Eretz Israel, the other side, and they said, this is a great place for us. Okay. So before we read source number 13, we need to ask ourselves a question. There is also a lot of grass in Israel. You don't need to stay here. A. B. You have the option to go into the promised land and you prefer to be on the other side because of your flock? And that's what Moshe told them. You don't remember the spies? That they didn't want to go into the land of Israel and they wanted to stay here and God was a little upset? And we wander around for 39 more years? Why do you want to stay there? Says the Abarbanel, and this is amazing. Rabbi Yitzchak Don Abarbanel, in the 15th century, says the following, 15th, 16th century. He says, I'm reading in the third line, ואפשר. ואפשר, and it's possible, בזה לתת לראובן וגד טעם אחר. והוא, he says, I know all the other interpretations, that Reuven and Gad, they misunderstood priorities, and they preferred money over their children and over the land of Israel. And maybe they didn't want to really fight. All the reasons. When we'll get to Sefer Bamidbar, we will talk about it, bli neder. Says the Abarbanel, ואפשר בזה לתת לראובן וגד טעם אחר. I would like to suggest a different reason. לפי שהיה ראובן בכור יעקב וראה שנטלה ממנו הבכורה וניתנה ליוסף, והמלוכה ניתנה ליהודה, ולכך קץ לשבת עם אחיו, כי חרפה היא לו שימשלו בו צעירים ממנו. This is powerful. The Abarbanel says, Reuven, the children of Reuven, realized, look, none of us will be kings because the right to be a king was taken away from our father Reuven and was given to Yehuda. And the right to be a firstborn was taken away from Reuven and was given to whom? To Joseph. Priesthood was given to Levi. So basically, we are going to be managed and ordered and commanded by whom? By our younger siblings. This is a disgrace. We don't want it anymore. We want to build our own kingdom. Yes, connected to Am Israel in the land of Israel. We're going to help them. We're going to be, the unit that will help them to conquer the land. But we want to create our own independent kingdom. We will be our own kings. We will be our own firstborns. We don't want to be led by our younger siblings. ובחר לנחלה לו מעבר לירדן לשבת בטח בדד ועל יראה ברעתו ושפלותו. And Reuven chose this place because it's very rich place. He can take care of himself, and it's also far away or far enough from not seeing how Am Israel is building their own thing with Judah and Joseph and Levi. He will have his own little mini Israel. Where? On the other side of the Jordan River, because Reuven just couldn't stand the fact anymore. He cannot be led by his younger siblings. And what about Gad? And Gad also נתחבר עמו. God also joined Reuven. Why? לפי שהיה בן זלפה שפחת עמו בדגלו, וזה טעם בני גד ובני ראובן, כי היו שניהם אחים ולא יתפרדו. It says Gad was also a firstborn from Zilpah, and he felt the same feelings. And he was in the same camp of Reuven. So therefore he says, Reuven, you are correct. We are both firstborns and we have nothing. So you know what? Let's just separate from Am Israel, and we can deal with it. I cannot deal with my fourth in line brother Judah telling me what to do, or Joseph's children telling me what to do, and I need to serve also Shevet Levi, the Levim and the Kohanim, and to give them all those gifts. I'm not interested. Let me be my own independent kingdom. What about half of Menashe? The Abarbanel says that really Menashe didn't want to go. Moshe was the one to push him there. Why? Different reasons. But basically, what we have here is something that I'm not sure how many of us knew. Based on the Abarbanel theory, at the eve of entering the land of Israel, there was a historical separation between the 9.5 tribes and the 2.5 tribes. I will focus more on the 2 tribes, Reuven and Gad. Basically, this harsh rebuke of Reuven, you lost it all, caused Reuven to create this resentment towards Am Israel, towards the other tribes, saying in a way it's not fair, and I'm not going to allow myself to be ridiculed and managed by my other siblings. I am going to build my own Am Israel, my own mini Israel, connected but separated. And I'm not going to read everything from Sefer Yehoshua, but Sefer Yehoshua at the ends of the book of Joshua, it describes that Bnei Reuven and Bnei Gad, the descendants of Reuven and Gad, start building their cities on the other side of the Jordan River after they helped all the Jews to settle in the land of Israel. So they fulfilled their promise. They went back to the other side of the Jordan River. And what did they do? They built an altar, major altar. ויבואו אל גלילות הירדן, that's the fourth line, ויבואו אל גלילות הירדן אשר בארץ כנען, ויבנו בני ראובן ובני גד וחצי שבט המנשה שם מזבח על הירדן, מזבח גדול למראה. They built a tremendous altar, where? On the other side of the river. Immediately, the other 9.5 tribes see something like that, and what do? They prepare an army to fight Reuven and Gad. They send messengers, 10 tribes sends 10 messengers to Reuven and Gad, and they tell them, what are you doing? What are you building an altar here? We have the Mishkan, the tabernacle, where? In Shiloh. We have it in Israel. You cannot have another altar. Don't you think it's enough? We already committed sins with the golden calf. Why are you building an altar? If you don't want to stay here, please come back to the land of Israel. And then, last pasuk, Reuven and Gad says to the children of Israel, El Elokim Hashem, Kel Elokim Hashem. No. God, heavenly God, hu yodea, he knows, v'Yisrael hu yeda, and you will know. Im bemered v'im b'mal ba'Hashem, al toshienu hayom hazeh. No, we, God forbid. We are not trying to create a golden calf here. Why did we build the altar? Because we wanted to create some kind of a stone that will commemorate the fact that we are brothers. Because with time and everything that goes on in life, people will forget that we are also part of Israel. So we created this mizbeach in order to create some kind of a connection between us and you. Says the Malbim, סיפר כי בנו את המזבח בצד של כנען שהיא בצד הירדן המערבי, וזה מעיד עליהם שלא היה דעתם להיפרד מישראל, שאם כן היו בונים בצד המזרחי. Says the Malbim, they built this altar on the western side of the Jordan River, which is closer to Am Israel, rather than on the eastern side of the Jordan River, which was more further away from the land of Israel, in order to what? To show that they want to be part of Am Israel. And in addition, they built it in a it was very tall, so obviously it was not used for sacrifices. It was used for what? For some kind of a memorial to remember that we are one nation. So basically the Malbim is trying to justify what they did. Did it help? The answer is no. The answer is that Reuven and Gad did create their own kingdom to some extent. And they were the first one to be expelled from their lands. And we are still waiting for them and for all the tribes to come back. But Reuven, and going back really to the character of this biblical figure, Reuven in a way lost it, not only to himself, for himself, but for his tribe as well. And as we say in Hebrew, it's a very chaval. You feel like a missed opportunity of someone who could have been so great, someone with tremendous potential, and he lost it because of one decision, of not being able to overcome his tendency to be that impetuous. So what can we learn from it? We can learn a tremendous amount of it. We can learn that we shouldn't be so quick to respond. We should try to be more thoughtful, more aware, sometimes to wait for the right timing, but also to understand that even after you hear such a rebuke from your own father, from Yaakov, don't make that mistake with your children. Reuven and Gad felt ridiculed by this entire situation. And you can't blame them. But in a way, they had to find a different meaning in their lives. Okay, we are not kings, we are not priests, we are not firstborns anymore. But try to define yourself. Not but with the things that you lost, but rather with the things that you have. Thank you.